Start. Today we'll be talking about, we'll start off with carcinoma of penis, then we'll go into prostate cancer. So now, a carcinoma of penis shows a wide variation in population in the sense that some countries are more affected, or some people are more affected than the others. Specifically, if we, let's suppose, talk about United States, uh, it is more common like in blacks than in white people. Okay, certain populations are more susceptible to penis cancer than others, especially those who are not circumcision. So the greatest incidence of penile cancer will mainly occur in men who are around 45 to 60 years of age. Pathologically, the tumors that are located will be in decreasing frequency. So the most common tumors you will find are in the frenum, then in the prepuce, then glans and coronal sulcus. Okay, so just write that down. Uh, Commonly occurs or greatest incidence is highest amongst 45 to 60 years old. That's the first point. Shows great variation in population. Certain populations are more affected than the others. Now, tumors are located. कैसा बोलना in decreasing frequency बोल के लिखेंगे. In decreasing frequency. So meaning the highest frequency or the most common location of tumor will be the frenum. Okay, the first one. Then it will be prepuce. Then it will be glans, followed by coronal sulcus. Coronal sulcus. Okay. If you go over the basic anatomy of penis, you'll be able to understand what these locations are. I'm sure you must have read about it. Just revise once. Okay. Now the tumor that appears, that is mostly cauliflower in shape. Okay, it'll grow out like this. Okay, wherever it is starting. Sometimes it can also be papillary, or it can be flat, or sometimes it can be ulcerating as well. So you can have complicated tumors where they are ulcerating types, or they can be just papillary type where they are occurring as small beads. Okay, like small papillae. Now, microscopically, squamous cell carcinoma of penis can be both fungating type or ulcerative type. And the tumor that you see is very well differentiated. You will see several types of cells present inside it and properly well developed cells. Okay, so that is about penis carcinoma. Now coming to, you do not have a lot, only a slight introduction about them. Carcinoma of prostate. Now, prostate carcinoma is the second most common cancer in men, followed by lung cancer. Okay, the most common cancer that you find in men is lung cancer. Then immediately there will be prostate cancer. It is said that this disease is very common in men above 50 years of age. See, as the age approaches where a person is highly susceptible to prostatic hyperplasia or BPH. Yesterday we studied about BPH. Around the same age, there is a higher chance of the patient developing or the person developing prostate carcinoma. Okay, its prevalence significantly increases to an extent that almost 50% of men above 80 years of age will have asymptomatic carcinoma. Okay, meaning almost half of the men who are over 80 years of age will be suffering from carcinoma, but most of them will be asymptomatic. Okay, so uh, second most common cancer in men. Okay. After lung cancer, incidence increases above 50, and 50% of 80 years old men have asymptomatic carcinoma. Okay. As is, if you remember prostatic hyperplasia, I told you that the age is around the same. 50 years frequency increases, and when they approach 75 to 80, what do you call, their incidence of BPH also increases. Subsequently, their incidence or their risk of carcinoma of prostate will also increase. Okay, now the common etiology that is associated, the causation that is associated with carcinoma of prostate will be divided into a few factors. Okay, so the first factor, if we talk about etiology, the first factor will be endocrinological, meaning dealing with hormones, specifically androgens. Now, androgens are considered essential for development and maintenance of prostatic epithelium. But what happens is in carcinoma, especially carcinoma of the prostate, this will begin when the person is at a stage of life where their androgens are highest. Okay, prostate cancer begins at the age where this begins at the age where androgens are the highest. Your main androgens being testosterone and androstenedione. You'll also have dihydrotestosterone, but those are usable form of this thing. Anyway, endocrinological, logical, right? So mainly exposure to androgens. Okay, whenever increased amount of androgens is present, that will increase the incidence of the cancer. But see, the age at which a man or a boy has highest amount of androgens is around 17, and it will be highest, or it will keep on that level for around 2-3 decades, depending on their lifestyle, depending on their health and several factors. Okay, but as such, that is the age when so anywhere between 17 to 47 is the age between where the person or that man can develop the cancer. Later on, it might be asymptomatic, or it might be only one malignant cell, but later on, as they approach the age of, above 50 up to 80 years, that is when it grows properly. Okay, or the risk becomes much more apparent. So that is endocrinological factors. Then we have racial factors, racial and geographical influences. Geographical influences. This is the second factor or second causation of prostatic carcinoma. Now, it is uncommon in Japanese men, Japanese, Chinese, very, very uncommon to find prostate cancer, but the prevalence is very high in Americans, especially American black people. Okay, they have a specifically high incidence rate compared to American white people, Caucasian. Okay, then there are a few environmental factors as well that will cause, though they are not exactly pronounced which environmental factors are causing them. It is hypothesized that it might be radiation, physical and chemical environmental factors. If the patient has nodular hyperplasia, meaning if they have prostatic hyperplasia of the nodular type, they have a chance that that nodular hyperplasia will develop into carcinoma later on in their life. And there is genetic susceptibility, but that is not completely clearly understood. At least at your level, you do not have a lot about it. So there is a genetic factor to it as well. Now, if you see the pathological changes that are occurring in the prostate, your the prostate which is undergoing carcinoma, or which has cancer, that will either be enlarged. Sometimes it will be small, or sometimes it will be normal size. So you will find the great variance in the size of prostatic cancer. You cannot exactly tell. Most of the times it will only be enlarged. You can find all the three. It might be normal in size, it might be enlarged, or it might be smaller. In 95% of the cases, though, it is located in the peripheral zone. Now, your prostate has different zone. From your base to the apex, you have peripheral zone, transient zone. Go over the anatomy once. Okay, so 95% of the cases, the prostatic carcinoma is located and it originates from the peripheral zone of prostate, especially in the posterior lobe. Okay, and if you hold the malignant tumor, it will be very firm to touch, and it will be fibrous. That is why it is firm. If you cut open this tumor, you will see small, small irregular areas which are yellowish in discoloration. Okay, yellow spots or yellow areas. So pathological changes. Now, pathological changes will include prostate might be enlarged, or it might be smaller than normal, or normal in size. Okay. Then the next point is that in 95% of cases, it is located, the tumor is located in the peripheral zone, especially around your posterior lobe. Okay. Closer to the apex. Now, the malignant prostate, as I told you, tumor is firm and fibrous, and cut section shows yellow areas. Okay, so those are the pathological changes that occur in your prostate cancer. Now, coming to female genital system, that completes our male genital system and the disorders of male genital system that you have in your syllabus. Now, coming to female genital system, the main first pathology that we'll see is fibroids. Okay, fibroids, or they are also called leiomyomas, or they are called fibromyomas. These are uterine tumors. Mostly they are benign, but they can be malignant in some cases as well. Okay, these are uterine tumors of your smooth muscle. Fibroids look like this. I'll show you an image. See, fibroids look like this. They are basically tumors of your smooth muscle. Now, they can occur in different locations, and based on where they are occurring or where they are originating from, they'll have different names. They can be intramural, or they can be submucosal. You can have subserosal, or you'll have other locations as well. They'll be present in the lumen. They'll be present near the fallopian tubes, so on and so forth. Okay, so these fibroids occur in about 20% of women above age of 30. Okay, they have fibroids of varying sizes, uterine myomas or uterine fibroids. They're the same thing. Okay, now as majority of the patients have benign what you call fibroids, it is not that big of a problem until and unless it is creating an obstruction. It is fine. You can perform a simple surgery and remove the fibroid. But sometimes what happens is, in less than 0.5% of the cases, this fibroid will become malignant, where it is spreading and it is causing proper cancer. Okay, symptomatic cases, especially those who have obstruction and things like that, they will have abnormal bleeding. Okay, abnormal uterine bleeding. They will have uterine pain or lower abdominal pain, or they will show symptoms of compression. Okay, I told you, whenever fibroid is malignant, or even if it is benign, if it is growing beyond a certain size, it will start compressing the structures inside the uterus. Okay, and that compression can also lead to infertility sometimes. So these fibroids, uh, around 20% of women greater than 30 years of age have asymptomatic fibroids, or they simply have fibroids rather than asymptomatic, have fibroids. Okay, they're also called myomas, uterine myomas, uterine fibroids or uterine myomas. Okay, now it will be malignant only in 0.5% of cases. So 99.5% of the cases, they are benign. Now sometimes they can be very big or they can be small. Okay, and symptomatic cases, even benign tumors can show symptoms. If they are growing very large, they will have compression. They will cause compression of the structures, and they will show certain symptoms. Okay, symptomatic cases show the following. They will show uterine bleeding, abnormal uterine bleeding. Mostly it is excessive bleeding. Okay, pain, uterine pain. The patient will have symptoms of compression. Okay, and infertility. So these are the symptoms that a patient with a fibroid or a fibromyalgia will show. Now the cause of fibroid is unknown, but it is said that continuous proliferation due to or continuous stimulation due to estrogen might lead to fibroids. But again, it is not solidly completely established. This is only a theory. Now, the fibroids are mostly located in uterus where they may occur in the myometrium. So it can occur in the, as you saw the location, it might occur in the myometrium, or they might occur just underneath the endometrium, or they might occur in serosa. Okay, these three locations are the common spots where fibroids generally occur. So fibroids are generally located in myometrium, serosa, or just under endometrium. Okay, the three layers of your uterine wall. Now pathologically, if you see what is happening in the uterus, these fibroids will generally occur in multiples. Okay, it will not just be one single fibroid, several multiple of fibroids will occur, and they will be circumscribed, meaning they will have well defined borders. They will be firm, nodular, and grayish white in color of variable sizes, meaning they can be very large, sometimes they can be very small. Okay, mostly they are multiple occurring in the same location as patches, or they can occur in different locations and they can grow significantly, causing a lot of compression. Please re-explain the fibroids. See, fibroids are, think of fibroids as small masses. Okay, these are masses that are typically made of smooth muscle cells. Okay, it is a tumor that is originating from smooth muscle cell. So if you cut open a fibroid, basically let's suppose this is a fibroid. Okay, if you cut it open, you will see smooth muscle cells, and you will see a little bit of connective tissue present inside. Okay, you will see them in bundles. You'll see literally whirls of bundles present inside the fibroid, and these fibroids can occur anywhere in the uterus. Okay, anywhere in the wall of uterus or inside the wall of the uterus. Now common locations will be myometrium, or it can occur in serosa. Some of them occur submucosally under the mucosal layer of your uterine muscles, and some might originate from endometrium. There are other locations as well. Some might occur near your fallopian tubules. In either of these cases, around 20% of women around of 30 years of age and over 30 years of age, they will have uterine fibroids. Now most of them are benign. Okay, 99.5% of these patients. So 20% ka matlab, out of 5 women, 1% will have this fibroid. But in 99% of these, 99.5% of these, it will be benign. It is tumor. It is a tumor, but it is a benign tumor. In 99.5% of the cases, it is a tumor. It is a benign tumor. Okay? It will not do any malignancy. It will not develop into cancer. In 0.5% of cases, it will be malignant. Okay? Meaning this will develop into a cancer. Only few. That out of 5, 1 will have fibroid, and out of 100 among them, 0 point, or out of 1000 of them, 5 will have. Okay? Let's suppose I take 5 women. Okay? Or I take 5000 women, easier. Okay? 5000 women में से only 1000 women will have fibroids, and out of these 1000 women, 5 women have a likely chance that they will develop malignancy, meaning out of 5000, only around 5 5 women will develop cancer of basically cancer of this thing, fibroid cancer. Okay, it will become malignant. Now symptoms, whether they are benign or they are this thing kya bolte, they are malignant, either way, whenever they are occurring, the person will have abnormal uterine bleeding. Okay, the patient will have severe pain. Okay, now depending on the extent of fibroid, how large they are becoming, how many they are becoming, pain will be variable. There will be symptoms of compression of your uterus, and infertility will occur. Okay, now if you see the pathological changes, as I was telling you, fibroids are generally occur in multiples. They will not occur in singly. They'll not be solitary. They'll be occurring in multiples. They'll be circumscribed, meaning they have well-defined borders around them. Okay, and they are very firm and nodular to touch. They are generally grayish white masses of variable sizes. a grayish white color, and they'll occur in variable sizes. Some of them can become very, very large, some of them will be specifically short. If you open this what you call fibroid and see what is inside, what it is made up of, there'll be basically two types of tissues or tissue elements that are present. Mainly it is smooth muscle cells, okay, bundles of smooth muscle cells with a few with a little bit of connective tissue present in them. Okay, so mostly smooth muscle cells with a little bit of connective tissue. Now, pathological appearance may be altered. In some cases, the appearance of that particular tumor will occur differently, or it will seem different if the patient has some secondary changes, or the patient has some secondary problems along with the tumor. Now, those secondary problems will be if the tumor is undergoing hyaline degeneration, meaning hyalinization is occurring and hyaline degeneration is occurring, or if cystic degeneration is occurring, meaning the tumor is developing cysts, or if it is causing infarction, or if there is calcification, or if there is infection, suppuration, necrosis, fatty change, sometimes sarcomatous changes. Okay, I'll just write them down. If any of these changes are occurring, that fibroid will look different. Okay, so normally, as I told you, it will look like a firm mass that is grayish white in color, but in or pathological appearance will be different in case of secondary changes, meaning the patient has advanced form of fibroids where they are developing some other problems along with that fibroid. Now that fibroid itself might have hyalinization, wherein there is hyaline degeneration. It might have cystic degeneration where cysts are developing, or there might be infarction. The patient might have calcification, or there might be infection developing in that area. It can be suppuration, infection and suppuration. Both of them work hand in hand technically. Infection and suppuration. Suppuration is pus formation. It is most likely related to infection. Whenever a patient is having infection in that particular tumor, because of inflammatory reaction, there can be pus formation. Okay? Sometimes you will be seeing necrosis, fatty changes, steatosis may occur there. Okay? Rarely sarcomatous changes. Meaning rarely a specific type of proteinaceous material will start building up in that area. That particular material is called sarcoma. Okay? So that is about fibroids. Hope you understood that. Now coming to the next topic, we'll discuss up to the etiology, then we'll finish. Okay? Carcinoma of cervix or cervix carcinoma. Now, in around 80% of cases of cervix carcinoma, it is squamous cell carcinoma, meaning of squamous cell origin. And the incidence of cervical cancer is nowadays in a declining trend, meaning the main reason is because it is being diagnosed earlier, especially in countries where medical facilities are good. You can perform a pap smear very easily and you can detect carcinoma very quickly so that it can be treated faster. And there is a what do you call lesser chance in developed countries that, or developing countries as well, where they have good medical services, that cervical cancer carcinoma will develop a lot. Okay, less chance. But in countries where living standards are very low and they do not have access to proper healthcare or adequate amount of healthcare, in those countries incidence of cervical carcinoma is high because you cannot detect it faster and there is a higher chance that it will occur. Okay. If we talk about etiological factors, now etiological factors are divided into four different categories. Okay, they can be epidemiological factors, they can be virological factors, cytogenic factors, and immunological factors. Now, first of all, epidemiological factors. What are these? Epidemiological factors का मतलब ये है, you will find who are severe risk patients. Okay, what are severe risk factors amongst several people? There are certain severe risk factors like women having what do you call early age of sexuality. Okay, they are becoming what do you call sexually active very early. That is one factor. Or they are having multiple sex partners. That is one thing. Or women having what do you call a sexual partner who himself had, he or she had several sexual partners. Okay, potentially high risk इसमें if they are having several sex partners, or they are having early age of sexual activity, or they are having a partner who had previously had multiple sexual partners. Another thing is if a patient has HPV infection, human papilloma virus, persistent HPV infection, that can increase the incidence of cervical cancer. So etiological factors में आता early age of sexual activity, multiple sexual partners, then a partner who previously had several sexual partners, and persistent HPV, human papilloma virus, papilloma virus infection. Okay, these are all epidemiological factors. Now, next factor will be virological. Now, direct causation. HPV is strongly implicated in the causation of cervical cancer if the patient is directly having HPV. In the previous case where persistent human papilloma virus is occurring, we are talking about a case where it has been transmitted through sexual partner and it is persisting for a long time, where the patient is not taking any proper treatment, or they're simply not vertical getting treated properly. Okay? They're not recovering. Second case में virological, it is directly a human papilloma virus without any sexual partner. ठीक है, other route से लग रहा उनको. In any case, HPV is strongly implicated in the causation of cervical cancer. So again, HPV. Then there are some cytogenic factors. Now those cytogenic factors will include people who have HPV along with history of cigarette smoking. So let's suppose even if you don't have HPV, if a patient has a history of cigarette smoking, or if they are immunodeficient, okay, they are at a greater risk of developing cervical cancer. So cytogenic factors, these include cigarette smoking, and uh, immune deficiency. Okay, or immunodeficiency. Okay, because of whatever reason, because of treatment they are taking for some other condition, let's suppose they are taking immunosuppressant agents, or they have something like HIV already, if they are immunodeficient, in such cases they have a higher risk of developing this carcinoma. And there are immunological studies. Now immunological factors will be if the patient has circulating tumor specific antigens and antibodies, the patient will generally have cervical cancer, though we do not know how it is occurring. But what we do know is that if a patient shows they are having specific antigens and specific antibodies for this particular type of cancer, they generally tend to have that cancer. Okay, so these are the etiological factors, though the last one is not exactly a factor, it is more of a diagnosis tool. You can tell that if antigens are present, they might have a cancer. We'll continue with the pathological changes about cervical carcinoma in the evening. ठीक है? In the evening या tomorrow. कल connection बराबर नहीं था, so I was not able to take a class.